There's a truth in this country that most people have forgotten, or were taught to forget. A truth buried under credit card debt and political, theater and celebrity distraction. A truth older than any billionaire, older than any party, older than any propaganda machine running overtime on our screens. It's the truth that the real America was never built by the elite, or the wealthy, or the ones born into the soft luxury of inherited power. It was built by the people who had nothing except their calloused hands, their tired backs, their raw courage, and the stubborn belief that they deserved better. If you want to know who the real Americans are, the soul of this land, go back to Blair Mountain. Go back to the men who tied red bandanas around their necks, grabbed whatever rifles they had, kissed their families goodbye, and walked into the Appalachian mountains knowing full well that the government might kill them for daring to demand dignity. Those miners weren't radicals. They weren't extremists. They were working people pushed to their breaking point. They were men who buried their sons in mine collapses, who watched their wives pack up their belongings after being evicted for trying to join a union, who were told they were disposable, until one day they said, "No more. Not here. Not in this country." They didn't rise up because they wanted to fight. They rose up because they were Americans. And somewhere deep inside their chests, this ancient, unbreakable instinct fired awake. I am not owned. I am not property. My children will not inherit my chains. That is the American spirit, not the polished billionaires performing patriotism on TV, not the politicians who pretend to be warriors, but have never sacrificed a damn thing, not the corporate class that treats our lives like numbers in a spreadsheet. No, the true American soul lives in the people who work, the people who build, the people who sweat, the people who bury their dead and wake up the next morning anyway, the people who get stepped on until finally, they remember that they are the descendants of rebels. Because every generation, there comes a moment where the elites forget something important. Americans don't bow. We don't kneel to kings. We don't kiss rings. We don't worship wealth. We don't let anyone, not corporations, not politicians, not oligarchs, tell us our place. And when the powerful push too far, when greed becomes policy, when oppression wears a government badge, when the wealthy start believing they are untouchable, that's when the fire wakes up again. That same fire from Blair Mountain, that same fire from the textile strikes, the steel mills, the bread riots, the farmhands, the railroads, that fire from every mother who ever stood in front of a police line screaming, "Not my child." That fire from every father who worked 3 jobs and still couldn't afford a roof. That fire from every young person choking on student debt. That fire from every immigrant who crossed oceans because they believed this country meant something. This is our inheritance, not wealth, not status, not privilege, but rebellion, courage, a refusal to be humiliated, a refusal to be used, a refusal to lick the boots of anyone who thinks they own us. We are Americans, which means we are the example the world watches. Not because we're perfect, not because we're the strongest, but because, when pushed to the edge, we remember exactly who we are. A people who don't stay down, a people who don't get tamed, a people who answer injustice with unity, so fierce it rattles the bones of the powerful. The miners at Blair Mountain weren't just fighting for a union. They were fighting for a promise. The promise that the working class in this country will always rise again. And today, in 2026, that promise is still in our blood, still in our lungs, still burning behind our ribs like a warning to anyone who tries to rule us instead of serve us. So remember this: you are not powerless. You are not small. You are not alone. You come from a lineage of people who shook mountains, people who marched into gunfire, people who tethered their fate to one another, because they believed that ordinary Americans, standing shoulder to shoulder, can achieve the impossible. And the elites, the billionaires, the dynasties, the social clubs of inherited privilege, they fear that memory. They fear that unity. They fear that fire, because they know what history has always shown. When everyday Americans wake up, when we stop fighting each other, when we turn and face the real oppressors, the ruling class doesn't stand a chance. So wake up. Stand up. Remember who you come from. Remember what this country was built on. And for God's sake, don't ever become a bootlicker. You are an American. Act like it. And show the world what that still means.